Hey, one of the things I've been most impressed with in my own practice of contemplative prayer and meditation and with integrating all the new HeartMath techniques that I've learned and gotten certified in is that it's really true, and you've probably heard me say it before, that the body can't lie and neither can your heart. So I want to ask you a couple questions here at the beginning. When you're totally stressed out, overwhelmed, burned out, maybe you're feeling that right now, maybe you've experienced it in the past, how does your heart feel? Like literally, how does that area around your chest and your heart area feel? Usually, if you're like most people, it feels kind of heavy and burdened, maybe sluggish. Or alternatively, you might find yourself going back and forth between that heaviness and burdened and feeling more like ramped up, on edge, having that rapid heartbeat that's more typical of anxiety. And when it gets really bad, if you're really stuck in a pattern of kind of overwhelm or trauma or chronic stress or burnout, you can just find yourself going back and forth between that total sluggish like collapse and the more anxious, like frenetic, always trying to like figure out what the next thing to do is. And you're going to feel that in your heart. Perhaps you can relate to that right now, even as you think about it. Now, let's flip this a little bit and try to think about a happy or a joyful moment in your life. It could be a major moment like, a wedding, the birth of a child, or just a simple connection with another person or a moment in nature. Now, if you think about and hold that in your mind and in your heart, how does your heart feel when you're more connected like that? It's kind of the opposite, right? If before we were talking about that heaviness, it's light when we're connected and joyful and in our true sort of sense of self. We get this lightness around the heart area. And I mean light in both senses of that term. I mean it in terms of like illuminated, enlightened, and the physical light that allows us to see, but also buoyant, right? The opposite of heavy, light, not heavy or weighed down. Usually when we feel that kind of lightness in the heart, we're feeling a sense of gratitude. I have yet to experience it with myself or with others where gratitude isn't there. We feel connected to others. We feel connected to God or to something bigger than ourselves or a higher power. And we feel more open to possibilities, right? When we're anxious or super heavy in the heart, we tend to close the heart like this, physically, kind of weighed down. And then we're also closing off to the life around us. We're closing off to opportunities. When we're more light and connected and buoyant, the heart is a little more open, a little more up, and a little more open to possibilities. So a question I've received recently from some people is, what does centering prayer meditation have to do with these HeartMath techniques that I've been talking about in these recent Facebook Lives? And I want to use the metaphor of taking care of your car to think about this. So bear with me here for a second. I want you to think about a daily practice of centering prayer and meditation, or some kind of centering meditation practice, is like going to the mechanic and doing the deep work of making sure that all the parts in the engine are working together. Only instead of fixing, which is what you would do when you take your car to the mechanic, we want them to fix it, right? Instead of fixing your car, we would call this healing. It's the healing of your body, physical body, your mind, your brain, your mind, your emotions, and your soul. So I use mind and brain because brain is kind of that physical component of your thinking, and your mind is that spiritual component, and then your emotions and your soul. So in centering prayer and meditation, we teach you to gently, and I emphasize the word gently, return to your sacred word whenever you notice yourself kind of getting caught up in your thoughts, something internal. Could be emotions, could be memories, could be worries or anxieties, or it could be something going on around you. Could be something that's drawing your attention away. Now, when you do that, when you gently return to your sacred word over and over again, each time you do that, you're letting go of a little piece of your ego and your attachments. And what happens is this is where the grace and light can come into your heart and into your soul. Now, as you start to let go of that ego, some people will call this the false self, some spiritual teachers. I prefer, instead of false self, I like to call it your separate self, or you could even think of it as your socially constructed self, right? It's the self that feels separate from others. It's the self that we kind of build up and we put on a resume, which isn't a bad thing. We need it to function in the world. But, if I really want to get to know you, I'm not going to say, can I please see your resume, right? I'm going to want to have a conversation with you, spend time with you. This is yourself with a small s. And that, every time you return to your sacred word and let go a little bit deeper, you are letting go or dismantling that small self or that separate self. And as you do that, what do you find? Well, you start to uncover what we might call your true self. And I would say this is your self with a capital S. In the yoga philosophy, they often will use the word Purusha, which is pure consciousness, pure awareness, gets translated into English as self with a capital S. It's that point of connection and intimacy between your true self and God, or something bigger than yourself, or call it the ground of all being, whatever helps you to kind of connect with that source that we all have pulsing through our bodies and our minds. Even when we're stressed out and closed down to it, it's still there. So by letting go of your small self or that ego, that constructed self, that separate self, in centering prayer and meditation, we call this the unloading and evacuating of your non-conscious mind. And it's where we tend to store that permanent stress. Thomas Keating calls it the emotional wounds of a lifetime, maybe even trauma if you've experienced something more traumatic and you're holding that. Another way that people talk about this is the issue is in the tissue, and it's in the physical body, it's in the heart, it's in the physical and the spiritual heart. It also includes those nagging little doubts and self-criticisms that tend to come up over and over again, no matter how much work you've done on them. Maybe you've done all kinds of therapy. You've done the journaling, you've done the inner work, you've done all of that, you've done the artist's way, or whatever else it is. Those things can just hang on because they're so deep in the tissue. They're in the non-conscious mind. Now, this is where the deep healing really takes place, is as you do your practice consistently, you start to take down the walls around your heart, and that allows couple things to happen. One is your true self, which is God within, that divine presence and divine wisdom within, just starts to emerge effortlessly in your daily life. And simultaneously, grace can get in from the outside. And that can be in the form, again, of nature, of other people that we love and care about, maybe even of somebody we don't love and care about who brings us an important lesson. But we're more open to it because our true self is light and ready for it. Our heart is ready for it. So that's the centering prayer and meditation part of doing this work. Now, recently I've added in some of these HeartMath techniques, and I want you to think of these as, it's like the simple daily maintenance that you do on your car. So if centering prayer and meditation is going to the mechanic and doing, rebuilding the engine, if you will, then the HeartMath techniques is like those little things that you do. It's cleaning it, the inside of it and the outside of it, making sure the air filters are cleaned, or even replacing them if you know how to do that. It's topping it off with gas and making sure you don't run out of gas on the side of the road. It's checking the oil and topping off the wiper fluid, and making sure all those basic things that you don't necessarily need a mechanic for are just functioning at optimal levels. Now, these are little adjustments that you can make throughout your day, these HeartMath techniques, that allow you to keep your heart and your brain and your mind and your soul running at optimal efficiency and in alignment. The scientific word that we call this in HeartMath is coherence, and it's measurable using the inner balance sensor, which I've talked about in some previous posts as well. The other great thing about HeartMath techniques is that they are in the moment. We talk about them as eyes open practices. You can do them in the middle of a meeting. You can do them in a conversation when you're starting to get triggered or reactive for some reason. And these can include some of the following techniques that we teach. Heart-focused breathing, it's as simple as it sounds. The quick coherence technique is heart-focused breathing plus adding in a little bit of emotional gratitude and content to help make it easier to maintain that coherent state. There's something called attitude breathing, using this grid that kind of tracks your emotions, and you can actually breathe, recognizing where you are now, where you might not want to be, and breathe your way into new, healthier, lighter emotions. There's also something called the freeze frame technique, which is again, a short, simple practice that you can do when you need to make a decision and you want to make sure that you're making decisions from that coherent heart state. And then a bigger picture one that we call heart mapping, which takes something called brain mapping that some of you maybe have done before, but adds in the heart component. And it's a really powerful way to align your brain, your rational brain, your thinking, with your heart and your emotional brain for when you need to make really big decisions or even kind of big picture strategic planning. Again, this can be for your personal life or in professional contexts. Now, when you take care of your entire being in this way, by bringing it to the divine mechanic on a regular basis through your centering practice, and by tending to those small maintenance things that we talked about with HeartMath techniques, you really start to break up the patterns that have been causing you to hold that heavy heart for so long. And maybe for some of you, you've been holding that heavy heart for so long it's just become normal, or it's just, you can't imagine a time where you didn't have that on a day-to-day basis. And you start to break that up slowly over time. It starts to build with regular practice. That's why we teach you all these things and then kind of help walk you through how to integrate it into your daily life. And when you do that, you remove the sluggishness, you start to find your heart is just naturally becoming lighter and more joyful. A couple other things that you can, or I should say patterns that people notice when they do this consistently, is you start to become less reactive to things that maybe used to set you off. Money was always a big stressor for me. Anytime that came up, I would just like shut down. But I'm much more able to kind of look at money decisions with an objective attitude after doing this for years. So you become less reactive, and maybe certain people that set you off, and you're able to stay more centered without kind of losing control. Maybe little things or annoyances don't bother you as much, and maybe even not at all. Maybe after a while you're like, oh, I don't even get upset about that anymore. Or because we're all still human, life is going to throw curveballs at us, difficult, challenging, emotionally challenging things can happen, and they will happen. It's just part of the human condition. But what people find is that they're able to return to center more quickly after bigger things like that tend to happen. And finally, when either small or big emotions can come up throughout your day, like getting frustrated with something that you're working on, or another person, or with yourself, you're able to process those emotions more quickly and with less resistance. And that then translates into getting your work done and being present with others that you want to be present with, using less emotional energy and less stress. So you have less of that resistance running through your system. That's the kind of synergy that comes from a daily centering practice and integrating them with those in-the-moment HeartMath techniques. So I've been talking about putting all this together for several months, and it's ready. It's go time. I've put this all together into a completely redesigned Centering for Wisdom program, which now includes, as it did before, learning centering prayer and meditation and integrating it into your daily routine, learning those HeartMath techniques that I mentioned above, like the heart-focused breathing, the quick coherence, the heart mapping, the freeze frame, and several other ones, as well as how to use the inner balance sensor, which will actually track your coherence and give you that biofeedback in real time, and you can track your progress over time. I'll share a quick win with you all here. I've been using it now for several months, and there are different settings in the app that control the difficulty level of what counts as like high coherence, medium coherence, and low coherence. And I was doing really well in the second out of the 4 difficulty levels for a long time. Every time I would go bump up to that 3rd level, it would be a little bit harder for me to maintain high levels of coherence. For the goal is kind of like 80% of the time or more when I'm doing the practice. And recently I've finally been able to kind of make that switch. So it takes that practice, but the cool thing is I can track it over time and see like, oh, this is making a difference in my life. It also includes identifying what I call your root why, which is your core purpose for your life. I've got a simple practice I teach to help you find that. And then the cool thing is these HeartMath techniques, especially the freeze frame technique and the heart mapping technique, are really simple, quick practices that you can use to stay aligned with your purpose and have your decisions guided by that larger wisdom, that lightness of heart, as well as that divine wisdom that resides in there. And you can apply it to really big, like long-term strategy things, career decisions, or really small daily things. And it just makes those decisions so much easier when there's that trust that you're being guided by your true self that's communicating to you through your heart, physically and spiritually. Now, There's a ton more that I could tell you about. I'm just hitting on some of the highlights here. So instead, what I want to do is to invite you to visit this new landing page at thomasjbushlack.com/mentor. It's in the description of this Facebook Live event or YouTube video if you're watching it that way. And I'll post it here in the chat comments as well at the end. But again, you can go to thomasjbushlack.com/mentor and see all of this laid out in one place. So I'm officially opening up for registration. I'm going to be running the first new cohort in March, but we're going to have just continual rolling enrollment going forward. So if you're watching this later, that's okay. You can still go to that page and check it out. And a special note, some of you maybe I've spoken with before, maybe we've had email or we've done a breakthrough session on the phone before, and maybe the timing wasn't right or the price wasn't right. Even if we've done that before, I want you to check out this page because it really is a brand new program. And one of the things that I really took feedback from was making the price point something that's doable and accessible for more people. So if that was a challenge for you in the past, please check it out. And then of course, all the new features that I'm adding from HeartMath are in there as well. So again, invite you to check out that page right now. It's thomasjbushlack.com/mentor, MENTOR. A couple other things to know about that page. If you have more questions based on this or reading that page, you can contact me directly from that landing page. At the bottom of it, you will see a little thing in the bottom right hand that is actually a Facebook Live widget. You could send me not a Facebook Live, Facebook Messenger widget. You can send me a direct message with questions and I'll get back to you. Or if you want to set up a 30-minute inquiry call, there's a form embedded right there at the bottom of the page. You can see when I'm available, you can sign up for a time, and I'll just call you at that time. So I'm super excited to offer this new program, help you put all of this together to get out of those habits that might create a heavy heart and into that lightness of heart that you deserve, that is your divine birthright, and that the world truly needs from you right now, because any way that we can infuse more lightness and compassion and connection with others during this challenging time is so needed. So again, click that link at thomasjbushlack.com/mentor, and I look forward to talking with you all soon. Thanks and have a great day.